You won't believe what went down in this quiet suburban neighborhood when one HOA board member decided she knew better than emergency services. It all started when a local resident noticed something strange: bright orange safety cones and a couple of potted plants blocking access to a clearly marked fire hydrant. At first, neighbors thought it was a mistake. But nope. It turns out the person behind it was none other than a well-known HOA figure, often described as overly strict and always looking for control, someone the community had quietly nicknamed Karen. Now, fire hydrants are there for a reason, especially in dry seasons when even a small spark can turn into a dangerous blaze. But when this woman decided the hydrant was an eyesore and claimed it lowered property value, she took matters into her own hands. What she didn't know: the local fire marshal had already received a complaint and was watching closely. Things escalated quickly once officials got involved. And just when you think it couldn't get any crazier, the moment she tried to argue her way out of it in front of uniformed officers, everything took a sharp turn. Let's just say the fire marshal didn't come alone, and what happened next had the entire neighborhood watching in shock. You want to stick around for what unfolded after that moment. So here's where things really start to unfold. The woman at the center of it all, who we'll call Cheryl for the sake of the story, had a reputation in the community. She'd been part of the HOA board for a while, always the first to send out notices about trash cans left out too long or lawn heights being non-compliant. But no one expected her to go this far. People thought she just liked rules. Turns out she liked control even more. Cheryl claimed she was beautifying the neighborhood. She even went so far as to send an email blast to residents explaining that the fire hydrant's location was ruining the aesthetic of the block and creating unnecessary visual clutter. But what she didn't mention was that she never got approval from the city or anyone in fire safety. That's when a resident, who happened to be a retired firefighter, got involved and quietly made a report. Unbeknownst to Cheryl, the fire marshal had started monitoring the situation days before the arrest. They took photos, documented her actions, and even visited the neighborhood in plain clothes. Meanwhile, Cheryl was proudly posting updates on the HOA website like she was doing the community a favor. But behind the scenes, things were building towards something way more serious than a neighborhood disagreement. As the days passed, tension in the neighborhood kept rising. Some residents were annoyed, but stayed quiet, not wanting to get into it with Cheryl. Others started whispering about how she had gone too far this time. One homeowner, Melissa, whose husband was on oxygen for a medical condition, was especially upset. Their house was just a few doors down from the blocked hydrant. In case of a fire, even seconds could make the difference. And now those seconds were buried under a row of potted plants and some fake landscaping rocks Cheryl had dragged in. Meanwhile, the fire marshal's office kept gathering evidence. A second marshal came by posing as a landscaper, pretending to offer Cheryl advice on her hydrant makeover. She proudly walked him through her plans, totally unaware she was being recorded. Another neighbor, James, who usually kept to himself, caught everything on his doorbell cam, especially the moment Cheryl snapped at a city worker who tried to explain the legal danger of what she was doing. She told him, "I'm on the HOA board. I am the authority here." The HOA itself was split. Some board members were backing Cheryl, worried that challenging her might start drama they didn't want. But others had started looking into city code violations, knowing this wasn't just a neighborhood issue anymore, it was becoming a legal one. Then came the emergency drill, the moment no one expected, but everyone would remember. The fire department ran a routine test in the area, checking response times and access to hydrants. When they pulled up to Cheryl's street, the engine came to a stop right in front of her setup. What was supposed to be a quick hydrant test turned into a scene. The firefighters stepped out, clearly frustrated. One of them tried to move the decorative rocks, but they were cemented into place. That's when radios crackled, and the fire marshal himself arrived minutes later. Residents started coming outside. Phones were recording. The tension was so thick you could feel it in the air. Cheryl walked out of her house calmly at first, like she was in control. But when she saw the fire marshal wasn't there to chat, her tone changed fast. She began arguing, saying she had full HOA approval, even though the board hadn't actually voted on anything. Her voice got louder. A few board members showed up too, some standing off to the side, clearly uneasy. The marshal asked her directly if she was the one who blocked the hydrant. Cheryl didn't answer right away. Instead, she doubled down, saying it was a community beautification project. But behind her, a firefighter was pointing at camera footage on a tablet, video that clearly showed her placing the obstacles. That's when things really started to unravel. Just when it seemed like Cheryl was cornered, a second twist caught everyone off guard. One of the firefighters quietly stepped aside to take a phone call, and when he came back, his expression had changed. Word had just come in from dispatch. There had been a small kitchen fire just a few blocks away the night before, and the crew assigned to that call had reported a delay. Why? The hydrant nearest the home had been inaccessible, the very one Cheryl had blocked. No one had put the pieces together until now. The fire had been quickly contained, but if it had spread even a little faster, it could have turned into something much worse. The family inside had no idea how close they'd come to serious danger. As the fire marshal relayed this new information, Cheryl's face changed. For a split second, the confidence cracked. She tried to pivot, claiming she didn't know it would impact real emergencies, that she meant well. But now it wasn't just about property violations or an overstepping HOA member. It was potentially interfering with emergency response. That meant the city had to take this more seriously. People watching from their front yards were whispering, texting neighbors who hadn't come outside. Someone even said they saw a plainclothes officer arrive. The situation was no longer just a neighborhood scandal. It was a public safety issue, and the stakes had just gone way up. With the fire marshal now aware that Cheryl's blocked hydrant may have delayed a real emergency response, things moved fast. A second city official stepped in, quietly speaking with officers who had arrived on scene. The crowd grew, some recording from across the street, others just watching in stunned silence. Cheryl, still trying to explain herself, kept repeating the phrase, community improvement, but no one was buying it anymore. Then came the moment no one saw coming. An officer approached her calmly, asked her to step aside, and within minutes, placed her under temporary detainment for obstruction of public safety operations. Gasps rippled through the neighborhood. It wasn't aggressive or dramatic, but the message was clear. This had crossed a serious line. As Cheryl was escorted toward the patrol car, a final unexpected twist came out of nowhere. One of the HOA board members, someone who had quietly supported her all along, spoke up. She told the fire marshal that Cheryl had pressured her and others into silence, even threatened fines for non-compliance if they spoke out. Apparently, Cheryl had gone rogue, using HOA power to push personal preferences. This revelation shocked everyone even more than the arrest. The hydrant was cleared by the end of the day. Emergency crews made sure it was fully accessible again. And just like that, what started as a beautification project turned into a neighborhood wake-up call and a lesson in what happens when power is pushed too far. In the days that followed, the neighborhood slowly returned to normal, but the impact of what happened stuck with everyone. The city launched an internal review of the HOA's actions, and several board members stepped down voluntarily, including the one who had finally spoken out. Cheryl was released the same day, but is now facing legal consequences for obstructing emergency services. The fire marshal issued a formal warning to the HOA, making it clear that any future interference with public safety equipment would result in immediate penalties. Residents came together in a way they hadn't before. A community meeting was held, and for the first time in a long while, people felt like their voices mattered. Melissa, the woman whose husband needed oxygen, spoke tearfully about how close things came to turning tragic. Even James, the quiet neighbor with the doorbell cam footage, shared his video with city officials to help. This story isn't just about an HOA gone too far. It's a reminder of how important it is to protect public safety and stand up when something doesn't feel right. A single fire hydrant became the center of a much bigger lesson. When community power is abused, it's the people who pay the price. And sometimes it takes a spark to wake everyone up.